Hi everybody, and welcome to part 2 in my Finola series. What I have here at the moment is the piece that I made during part 1 of this series. There to be the next video that way in my feed. And what I'm going to do today isn't to go through the next part in its entirety, but I'm going to interpret the chart that is used as part of chart B in the Finola pattern. If you want that pattern, there's a link in the description here, as well as a link to the woolen make along, which this is the guest crochet pattern for. Now I have got this partial chart here, which I'm going to talk you through. I have got quite a lot of explanations over on YouTube for how to read the charts that I use for my short hook Tunisian patterns. This is a partial, there's more before and after on this, but this is really the most important part of chart B in Finola. So I said I'd go through this in its entirety. Now, just for the record, anybody who doesn't understand my charts yet, each of these white squares is read from top to bottom, and each of the columns is read one at a time. So I'm sorry about the noise in the background, by the way, it's a busy house here at the weekend. So we're going to be starting from the top and working our way down and reading all symbols in sequence. Reading this first one here as column number 1, the second one as column number 2, and this third one here as column number 3. Now the numbering is different because there are more before and after in the actual pattern, but this is good for illustrative purposes, if nothing else. So what I have here at the moment is a series of lines down the length of my last column. I've got 6 of them in total. If you look at them here, you'll be able to see them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the foundation loop at the bottom there, which is a chain at the very base of our work. So what I'm going to do is assume that that is this piece here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the chain at the base, which is this grey square, number 1 here. So that essentially is that first piece there. And I'm going to focus on the second column of my work here. Now, the second column starts off with another white square. So all I do on my piece here for that is to find the first line along, and the action required for this is the same as we've done before. It's just hook in, yarn over, and draw up a loop. That's that first white square entirely complete. Now the next piece here are some grey shapes stuck together, and those grey shapes, depending on how many there are that are stuck together, is a decrease essentially. So in this case we've got like 2 lines worth. We've got this guy here and this guy here, and they're both attached to each other. So what we're going to do here is a decrease by sliding, sorry about the background, sliding through 2 loops, yarning over, and then drawing through both of those loops like so. So what I've done essentially is I've taken 2 lines and I've turned them into 1. So I've decreased our number of loops on this row. Now the grey or the black triangles there are 2 of them. There's a little line there should be a little line in the middle, but there are 2 of them, and there's a number 2 on it as well, just to ensure that you keep yourself in the right number here. Each grey triangle you get denotes a yarn over. So we're going to be creating an eyelet where that number 2 is essentially in an otherwise solid piece of fabric. So for the 2 yarn overs, we simply go yarn over, and then we've got our 2 yarn overs complete. So we continue reading down, and we've another 2 grey shapes here. That's another decrease. So I pop in to the next line and the next line along, and I decrease them together. So I go yarn over, and I draw through both of those lines. And you can see there, it's an interesting kind of shape you end up with. Your first line continues on the hook. Your second and third are sort of the fork in the road, resulting in this guy here. We have our 2 yarn overs, and then we've got another 2 lines that result in the fork in a road into that loop there. And at the very end of our piece, since we are working that away, we've got 1 piece left, 1 white square, and then into our base at the bottom. So I find that very last line, which is this guy here, yarn over, or hook in, yarn over, draw up 1 final loop, because that's all our white square requires, and then into our base. And in this case, our base is our foundation chain here. Pop in, yarn over, draw through. Now we are back to the same number of loops we had previous to that. We've got our bodyguards at the front and the back, and we have our 6 in between. So always take stock before you go anywhere else to make sure you have the right number as you go. After this, our return pass here, again, because we're doing foundation, we go yarn over through 1 to start with, so that you have a loop for your next column to work into. And then no matter what you're doing with it, decrease, yarn overs, anything like that, it's still yarn over through 2 the whole way back. So yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, all the way back up. And you'll see you'll already have an eyelet in place. Now we'll do the next column along, column number 3 in this case. You've got a gigantic big eyelet there on that as it is, where before it used to be very solid fabric. You now have something that's an awful lot bigger. Great for buttonholes in Tunisian, by the way, this as well. Okay, so there is column number 2 complete. And you can see visibly you've got 2 lines at the top, you've got 2 lines at the end, and you've got kind of got this blobby bit in the middle, which we'll go through bit by bit. So that is column number 2 with your eyelet right in the middle there. This stretches up and down a bit more. So column number 3 again is 6 simple stitches, really was what you'd call them if you're doing traditional Tunisian, but because we're short hook, we just call them white squares or just or regular spaces. So you've got 6 of those, and again we're going to work into the base again as usual. So with that, picking up your 6 in order. Take stock of what you have. As I said, you've got 2 at the start, 2 at the end, so you're going to need to pick up 2 to make your 6 in the middle there. I'll pick up my 2 here as normal. That's my first one. My second one is there. If you ever can't find them, by the way, look back and see what came before. In this case, we had a decrease, which we know will end up in a fork in the road for this guy here, our second loop, which is the one we're on. And you can see that fork in the road right there. So it's those are decreases are very good indications in the fabric of where you should go. So I picked up those 2 loops. We're on that loop there now. And this one and the next one both butt right in on your yarn overs. So you're going to be using your yarn overs to pick those loops up. So for a large eyelet, which is what this one is, clearly, but it's also called a large eyelet, what we're going to do here is pick up a loop in the actual hole itself first. So I've just slid straight through, not going through any particular loop, just through the hole itself. Yarn over and draw through. That's 1. And then for the second one, if you try and go into the hole again, you're not going to end up with anything that works. But if you find that little ligament there in the top left-hand corner of the hole, that there is like a little cobweb in the corner of a window. That is your second yarn over. That's this guy here. So if we just pick him up on his own, that's all I'm doing. I'm sliding straight through and just picking that up. Yarn over and draw a loop through that. That gives us the 2 we need inside our eyelet. And then I can pick up my last 2 using the last 2 lines. This guy and then that guy afterwards. So in there and in there. Once again, we have a grey square at the bottom, number 3. So we're going to pick up at the base, like so. There you go. And there's your eyelet in place. Our return pass, of course, exists nonetheless. So it's yarn over through 1 to ensure we have a base for our next stitch along. Yarn over through 2 the whole way back up. Yeah, so the key really is that whenever you have a white space, it's just picking up a loop in the line from the previous row. Every set of grey symbols is a decrease, and for every black triangle you see, it is a yarn over. So if you only saw 1, you'd only do 1 yarn over, but since we have 2 and the number 2 in it, we had 2 yarn overs, which made that extra large eyelet. There you go. That's that, and hopefully that's one of the eyelets in Finola demystified. Thanks a million for watching. See you again in a few days.